Yesterday, Sayadaw-10th explained various kinds of happiness that the worldly beings are coming across. Kama Sukha means the sensual pleasure one gets by getting various kinds of sensual objects. When one gets sensual objects that the person wants, one feels happy, and one gains this pleasure of enjoying sensual objects. But after some time, the person gets bored in enjoying sensual pleasure. Such kind of sensual pleasure is based on impurity, and thus they are called Nila Sukha, happiness that is compared to feces. Because such kind of sensual pleasure are impure, it is also called Anariya Sukha, impure happiness that impure beings enjoy. Such impure happiness are enjoyed by worldly beings who have thick layers of defilements. Most of the ordinary people enjoy sensual pleasure. And because sensual pleasure is mixed with impurities, it is not good. And mostly people take high esteem of sensual pleasure. If they are spending one's life, if one is spending one's life in seeking sensual pleasure, then his or her life will be wasted with sensual pleasure. Most of the people do not see flaws of sensual pleasure. They take it as good, pleasant. They hold high esteem of sensual pleasure and they are attached in it. And they think about sensual pleasure, they talk about sensual pleasure, they do things in order to get sensual pleasure. And not having wise attention, one commits wrongdoings based on sensual pleasure, and unwholesome deeds arise. Due to these unwholesome deeds, one gains bad consequences, bad results. If one has control of one's mind, one enjoys sensual pleasure moderately, and one will not do things that are unlawful. If one gets sensual pleasure unlawfully, then it will bring bad results. A person who has control of oneself will be afraid to get sensual pleasure that is unlawful, as the person understands that by getting sensual pleasure that is unlawful, it can bring bad results, bad consequences. So, one sees sensual pleasure as frightening, as one sees the flaws of sensual pleasure. As sensual pleasure can lead to danger, they are dangerous, they are frightening. It is called Paṇḍitā. The sensual pleasure is called Paṇḍitā because it is frightening, it can cause danger. But most people nowadays do not see the flaws of sensual pleasure. The example is given here. A pig who likes to eat feces does not feel disgusted with feces, but the pig relishes by eating feces. So this is compared to lack of moral shame. And another example here, the insects, moth insects, they go to the light, they go to the bulb, and they die as they are not fearful of the light bulb. Not being afraid of the light bulb, they go to the light bulb and they die due to the heat of the light bulb. So this is compared to lack of moral shame. Not thinking of sensual pleasure as shameful and frightening, such is compared to the pig eating feces and the moth not afraid of the light bulb. Sensual pleasure is polluted and dirty. Wise people such as the Buddha and the noble beings see sensual pleasure as faultful. They see the flaws of sensual pleasure. Seeing the flaws of sensual pleasure, these wise beings know that sensual pleasure is not true happiness. Having power of reasoning, having power of prudence, such wise people seek the true happiness. So they give up the worldly pleasure. By giving up the worldly pleasure, one gains nekkhamma sukha, happiness of renunciation. By staying alone, one gains viveka sukha, happiness of seclusion. And also, when one practices bhavana, mental development practice, staying alone with mental development practice, practicing meditation, one gains upasama sukha, one gains the happiness of tranquility, calm and tranquility, when one's mind is away from defilement. By practicing, one gains knowledge, such as discerning mind and matter. And by practicing the three trainings, sila, samadhi, panya, morality, concentration, and wisdom, according to the teaching of the Buddha, one develops knowledge stage by stage. When one develops knowledge stage by stage, by practicing the three trainings, one feels joyous and satisfied. Especially when one gains the stage of uddiyabaya jnana, knowledge into fast arising and passing away, one feels very happy and joyous, and one realizes that the happiness one gains in the Dhamma field is true happiness. At the stage of uddiyabaya jnana, one understands through his or her experience of practice that the happiness one gets in the Dhamma field is more joyous than the worldly happiness. But still, the happiness one gains at the stage of Uddiyapaya Jnana, it still is not free from the physical and mental phenomena that are arising continuously. So the continuous arising of physical and mental phenomena are called paṇḍitā, as these physical and mental phenomena are arising continuously like a stream of current. So the happiness one gains when there is the continuous arising of physical and mental phenomena is not as great as the happiness one gains when one realizes cessation. Apavada means cessation of physical and mental phenomena. By practicing, when one reaches the stage of apavada, reaching the stage of cessation, then one truly realizes the genuine happiness. One understands through his or her experience that by gaining cessation, by attaining cessation, such kind of happiness is guaranteed kind of happiness which is truly great. When one has attained cessation, the person is said to see the Buddha as the person has realized the Dhamma. Realizing the qualities of the Dhamma through his or her experience, the person believes, the person has faith and confidence on the Buddha, in the Buddha who founded the way. In this way, one develops unshakable faith and confidence in the Buddha. One develops unshakable faith in the Dhamma, and one also gains faith and confidence, unshakable faith and confidence that there is the guaranteed kind of happiness by practicing the Dhamma. In this way, one realizes from his or her experience. It is called Paṇḍitā, meaning one gains knowledge through direct experience. And based on the knowledge one gains through direct experience, there will be anumana, inference, understanding that the others will be the same. By practicing the Dhamma, they also gain the true happiness through the practice of meditation. So in this way, one practices systematically, one develops knowledge stage by stage. Instead of paṇḍitā, continuous arising of physical and mental phenomena, one attains apaṇḍitā, the cessation, where the nama-rupa phenomena comes to cessation. When one has attained cessation, one sees the Buddha by realizing the Dhamma, and one gains the true happiness. One comes to acceptance, confirmation, and decision that Buddha is the person who guided, who showed, who founded the way to the total peace, and one has unshakable faith on the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. The kind of faith and confidence one gains after one has realized cessation such kind of faith and confidence is unshakable. It is firm faith and confidence once one had realized cessation. Such kind of practice can uplift one's life, and one has to practice this in order to uplift one's life so that one will be free from the gravity of kilesa defilement. Practicing Satipatthana practice, one can become free from the gravity of defilement, and thus one will feel lighter and lighter away from the gravity of defilement. So yogi should have faith and confidence. Yogis should practice diligently according to the teaching of the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw-ji, in accordance with the teaching of the Buddha. And Sayadaw-ji guarantees that by practicing diligently with faith and confidence according to the teachings of the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw-ji, Sayadaw-ji guarantees that such yogi is sure to attain the true happiness. So Sayadaw-ji encourages deeply that the yogis practice diligently. Yogis has to practice diligently so that it will be worthwhile coming to the retreat. Most people understand that only if one meets the sensual objects, the pleasant objects one wants, there will be good feeling in seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. So they understand that by seeing good things there will be good feeling, and thus it will be happy. So in this way they think that by coming into contact with these pleasant objects at the sixth sense door, there will be good feeling, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and one will feel happy by getting these good feeling in seeing, hearing, and so on. Phassa paccaya vedana, contact produces feeling. So when these pleasant objects come into contact at the sixth sense door, they take pleasure in seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, and they consider it as very happy and very good. So these people do not know that without feeling, without good feeling, there is happiness. They do not know that there is a kind of happiness which arises without feeling. Actually, the kind of happiness without feeling is the kind of happiness without feeling excels the happiness that is connected with good feeling. Buddha himself taught that the kind of happiness that arises without feeling excels the happiness one gains through good feeling. During the Buddha's time, the great disciple, Venerable Sariputta, was teaching to the Sangha. So Venerable Sariputta was teaching the Sangha that Nibbana is great and Nibbana is true happiness. But one of the old monks, replied to Venerable Sariputta, how come Nibbana has no sensation, no feeling, and thus how come it is good? Such kind of people think that Nibbana, not having any sensation, it will not be happy. So here, there are two kinds of happiness. The first one is Vedajita Sukha, happiness one gains by coming into contact with the six sense objects, And the second one is Avedajita Sukha, the kind of happiness without feeling sensation, without coming into contact with the six objects. So Sayadaw says what the audience think of it. So usually people are more acquainted with the kind of pleasure by coming into contact with the six sense objects. So most of the people believe that it will be happy only by coming into contact with pleasant objects. And they believe that there will be happiness when there is good sensation, good feeling by coming into contact with the sense objects. So in the case of sensual pleasure, it is correct that one feels happy by coming into contact with sense objects. So it is true that one feels happy when there is good sensation, good feeling by seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. So by seeing pleasant sights, by hearing sweet sounds, and so on, there will be good contact, pleasant contact, there will be pleasant feeling, and one feels happy with it. But sensual pleasure, after enjoying sensual pleasure, what is left is suffering. So it will be good if it is good and it keeps on being good. It will be good if it is very satisfying, but it is not. So after enjoying sensual pleasure, suffering is left. And then after enjoying sensual pleasure, after some time, one gets bored with it. One becomes fed up with it. So Sayadaw here gives an example. When someone has some skin infection that is very itchy, one has to scratch, and such person even takes delight in scratching as it feels good after scratching. So some people may even take delight in scratching, closing the eyes, and then at times when the itchiness is in the part of the body where one cannot reach, then one even asks somebody else to scratch, like asking somebody else to scratch his or her back. So Sayadaw says, Sayadaw knows this, it is quite enjoying to scratch, and then one gets a good feeling after, one gets a good feeling by scratching. So if one scratches to relieve the itchiness, it is good, but if one scratches more than needed, then the skin can peel and it can even cause stinging feeling, unpleasant feeling if one scratches more than needed. And if the skin peels off, the skin can even become infected. There can be infection. So In this way, the sensual pleasure is frightening. After getting sensual pleasure, there will be defilement, unwholesomeness, and one can be degraded. So sensual pleasure is frightening. One has to gain the bad consequences after enjoying sensual pleasure when one has defilement. So, in the same way, if one had scratched more than needed, there will be stinging feeling, unpleasant feeling after scratching a lot. In the same way, when one enjoys sensual pleasure a lot, then it leads to suffering. So, when the enjoyment of sensual pleasure comes to an end, then one feels unpleasant. So, in the example, it will be better off that the itchiness does not arise. If there is no itchiness, one doesn't have to scratch. It will be more peaceful without the itchiness. So in the same way, the sensual pleasure, after enjoying it, it leaves the suffering, so it will be better off being peaceful. The kind of happiness one gains by being peaceful, it is more precious. So such kind of happiness, peaceful happiness, excels the other kinds of happiness. When one is free from illness, it is good. In the same way, when one is peaceful, it is happy. So Sanda, Paṇḍitā, meaning calm happiness, good happiness, excellent happiness, that is very precious. So there is a limit to enjoying sense objects as a human being. So when seeing good things, hearing good sounds, smelling good fragrance, eating delicious food, touching good contact, there is always a limit. So when one enjoys sensual pleasure, there should be a limit, and one should have the discipline not to go beyond the limit. So when one is enjoying sensual pleasure, one should be content with one's own. So if one is not content with one's own, if one wants to enjoy sensual pleasure extremely, then one tends to enjoy things with other people's partner and so on. So when one becomes extreme, having sensual pleasure with other people's partner, there can be suffering. It can even lead to illness such as AIDS and so on. When enjoying sensual pleasure with one's own partner as well, there should be limit. One should not go too extreme. People who are enjoying sensual pleasure, going into extreme without any limit, their life becomes ruined. So it is said that even if one is enjoying sensual pleasure within one's own reach, it should be moderate. One should not go extreme. So having power of prudence, power of reasoning, one should take care that one does not enjoy sensual pleasure in extreme. Having sensual pleasure in extreme can lead to suffering. There will be defilements and it can lead to suffering. And one is lead to lower existences. That's why it is called Paṇḍitā, sensual pleasure. It's frightening. It can cause danger. It can, by enjoying sensual pleasure in extreme, one can get bad consequences immediately and after effect. If one cannot do without Vedayita Sukha, one should only enjoy the pleasure within one's limit and within one's own. And one should control oneself not to go extreme. One should control oneself so that one does not have fun with other people's partner or spouses. One should keep the 5 precepts. Most of the beings think that there is happiness when there is pleasant feeling. So they think that only when there is feeling, there will be happiness. But there is happiness where there is no feeling. When one is enjoying the sensual objects, one takes pleasure with sensual objects, one after another, one after another. And one, even when one enjoys sensual objects one after another, after some time, one becomes exhausted and becomes fed up. So even if one sees good things that one really likes, after some time, one gets fed up. And the same goes with hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. One cannot keep on doing continuously all the time. After some time, one gets fed up. After some time, one becomes exhausted and one wants to sleep. However, the objects may be pleasant, but when one becomes exhausted, when one wants to sleep, one will no longer be interested in these pleasant objects. So in this way, when one becomes exhausted or sleepy, one will not want to enjoy these objects, however they may be pleasant. At the time when one is fast asleep, the feeling is not obvious. During one's sleep, there is no seeing, and also hearing pleasant sounds is not obvious. And even if there are fragrances near one's bed, such as flowers or incense, one will not feel it. And at the time of sleep, there is not a good flavor that one can feel. Even though one may be sleeping on a very comfortable, luxurious bed, but one will not feel it when one is fast asleep. And also, during sleep, there is no thinking. In this way, during sleep, there is no prominent feeling when one is fast asleep. Only after the person gets up, the person says, I had a very good sleep. But if she were asked to explain how good the sleep was, the person will not be able to explain, but the person just say it is a very good sleep. So based on the comment that the person say it was a good sleep, it is good and it is free from feeling, obvious kind of feeling when one is asleep. So the kind of good during the sleep it is good, but there is no feeling that is obvious. It is quite peaceful during sleep. In the same way, when there is peacefulness away from the sensation of coming into contact with the sensual objects, it is peaceful and happy. Even in one sleep, it is pleasant and happy without the feeling of sense objects during sleep. So in the same way, there is the kind of happiness where there is no feeling. Sleep is Vedayita Sukha, as there is physical and mental phenomena still arising, so it is taken as Vedayita Sukha, but the sleep is not like the happiness one gains when one is awake, but it is peaceful and good. In the same way, Nibbana is the happiness where there is no feeling. It is genuine peace. So when one is fast asleep, if one of the family members wake the person up without important matter, if the family members wake the person up to see good things or to see a TV show or something, the person will not be happy. The person will not wake up happily to see good things, to hear good songs, but the person will be angry. How dare you disturb my sleep? So in this way, when one is fast asleep, the feelings are not obvious. During sleep, one is not enjoying the sense objects. The feelings are not obvious. The feelings are there, but it is very subtle that one does not know it. So it is very peaceful to sleep, and most of the people enjoy to sleep because it is very peaceful. So most people prefer the peacefulness in sleep than seeing good things, hearing good sound, and so on. So most of the people prefer the sleep than seeing good things, hearing good sounds, and so on, because it is peaceful. So Sayadaw will continue to explain tomorrow how one should practice in order to gain the genuine peace that has guarantee from both theoretical and practical aspects. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.